Good day, everybody. How's it going out there? Well, last year, a website would go down by the name of SoFurry. And little did we know, it would be about 6 months before the website would even come back up. And when it came back up, nothing would ever be the same. The old interface, the old classical interface that everybody knew and apparently loved, would no longer be with us. Instead, they would be using the new Furry Next interface, the one that makes it look more like a modern website with a modern furry art aesthetic website, making it look more like SoFurry and basically removing its roots. Now, a lot of people are passionate about that. I know this because when I wrote about it in January, it coming back online, I didn't really go into much detail. I just made like one or two sentences and that was it, because I thought it was important news to share for people who cared about SoFurry that it came back up. But also, it's not important to dwell on it because it's back up. Obviously, the record in my mind, record setting, 6 months of downtime is something also to take into consideration. But obviously, the comment section had a lot more to say about it. And if you go to the link in that article, if you go in the link in my description here, you're going to be sent to an article that will go over. You can read the comment section. Usually, I don't like talking about the comment section in Flera because it can get a little non sequitur, a little weird. But I think it is, in this case, fans being very passionate about a website that they very much care about. That being said, SoFurry is kind of in a rocky position when you look, from my opinion, when you look at it from a distance. I know a lot of furry writers who have a very big draw for that history because the history of SoFurry was it used to be called Yifstar. And it used to be like a furry / fiction place where, furries would put up their titillating stories, as it were. And sure, like that's what its history was. But obviously, when they changed their name to SoFurry, they had a bigger game in mind. They wanted to be a more general furry art site. And for a bit, they were competitive. They were growing and sort of chomping at the heels of Fur Affinity for a little bit. It was, I believe, the second most popular site out there, but now those days have come and gone. E621 stands out as a secondary site that a lot of furries use to browse websites, not so much to contact the artists. And I think that's a reason some artists don't care for E621, because like it's very much a consumer base instead of like a community base, right? It's very much you are consuming pieces of art and consuming those things. That being said, SoFurry, when it's trying to make itself into another furry community, when other furry communities exist and Discord exists and VR chat exists and all these different places that provide all these different things, and Second Life still exists, like all these places exist for furries to hang out and be a community in, SoFurry kind of has its work cut out for it. That being said, a lot of concerns and fears have been coming up, and a lot of people said SoFurry, they're so passionate to the point where the phrase "SoFurry is dead" came up, and obviously I'm like, it's not dead yet. In the words of a wolf detective, we're not dead yet. It's hard to tell when a furry website is going to fail on its face. And it's interesting to me that the new sort of like SoFurries now seems to be the new Fur Affinity. In a way that I don't think the leader Tormiel expected it to be, in that Tormiel seems to be starting to become a pariah. And basically other people who are so passionate about SoFurry are getting so frustrated that they're literally now promoting another furry website in the comment section of my SoFurry article that just said, "Hey, it's back up," and they're calling it Mousepad, which, by the way, is a horrible name for a website in general. Because when I look up mousepads, obviously I find mousepads, and Like, so they literally, and then they literally linked the website of mouse pads in one of the comments. I did look at it, and it looks sketch as heck. It's like just a login page and like a join us thing. I tried finding a main page, couldn't find one really. So it's like, sign up for our thing, which doesn't appear to be a furry website, but it's a furry website. Trust us, bro. Like it's like it's kind of funny because it has like an older website feel, and like now older websites kind of seem suspicious, even though every other furry website or every other normal website out there is stealing all your information. Mousepad's interface and the way it was introduced to me makes it feel like I'm going to get my information stolen, even though it's probably more true of Google and Meta that they're taking your information and doing things with it. But other than that, like the whole thing about it is like, so finally someone shared something of interest though. And that's why I like having debates in the comment section sometimes, is that you do find out interesting things. And one of the interesting things I found was a website that they showed, which was Furbitron. And like, because back in the day, I used to actually compare sort of furry website metrics, and it was on like this thing called Alexia or something, and Alexia kind of went down because, you know, it became pay to use, and then like basically it disappeared from the face of the internet, where I could like compare web traffic for Affinity and SoFurry and Ink Bunny and all that. But apparently now there's a new one called Furbitron, and it tells you here on the screen what Furbitron does. Basically, it takes the number of submissions to the site, to the API for each of these different websites and different means, and uses that in order to measure the site activity and whether it's increasing, decreasing, or anything like that. So it's a very interesting tool and a service, and I find, and obviously its focus is furry sites, and I always love it when furries do little cheeky things. The icon for the website in the tab is a measuring stick and an eggplant. That's right. They literally called it a measuring contest. Which is, I always love little cheeky bits like that. That's like funny. So that being said, I obviously, is SoFurry dying, or is it quote unquote dead? Obviously not yet. Obviously it's still up and you can still go there. If you ever, and by the way, if you ever do have fears of your favorite website like passing on, you should absolutely do what you can to remove or to gather the stories and the things that you like, gather links to places, gather like, and, you know, take stories, you know, in an offline mode, especially for a text site. It's not that expensive to, you know, text is very like information dense. So like saving, you know, local copies of your favorite stories shouldn't be too big of an ask. And if you're the artist of those said stories, you should absolutely do that if you think that the place that you uploaded things to is at risk. I have copies of my videos, you know, and try to maintain storage of it and stuff like that. So very much something you should do, you know, in case YouTube decides to do silly things. Who knows what the future brings. But here's an example of it. Now, this is obviously, it's rainbow vomit a lot, and there's a lot of things, and I feel really bad for folks who are colorblind. But in essence, like, this is the example of SoFurry. So they have like every different year is a different color / scheme. Even with like, even myself just sitting here looking at this, like, it's tough because like if I am zoomed out too far, I can't see the dotted line ones versus the solid line ones. But obviously this person's not, this person's a data person, which I am absolutely flabbergasted for. I love data dumps and data mining and data things like that, and people taking the time out of their day to maintain databases and screenshots and things like this and data information like this are, you know, well worth their weight in gold. I'm so glad that somebody had linked this to this site. But The most important one is the two lines that sort of end in the middle. There's in that sort of under the 60,000 line. There's a white line and there is a gray line. The gray line represents 2025 when the website shut down. The white line represents 2026 when the website started back up. And you can see that about 35 days into the year, all of a sudden a bunch of like submissions get thrown in. So the interesting thing about this is how 2025, as a year starting up, was not doing so hot to begin with. So the interesting thing is like SoFurry, people declaring SoFurry as a dead site, now might not have like thought about like, was SoFurry having trouble before they shut down their servers and basically revamped their site? And the answer to that question, at least according to what you can see on the chart here, seems to be, yeah, they were in trouble. The gray line there, representing the year of 2025, that solid gray line, is falling short of the yellow dotted line. And the yellow dotted line is 2011's submissions. So as far as submissions go and submissions to a furry art site, the amount of content being shared on SoFurry seems to have been lower than the amount of content that was being shared in 2011. Now, I'm saying everything here with an asterisk, and we'll go over that at the end of the video here for those who care about that kind of detail. But as you can see, 2026 is showing up even worse. Now, I'm going to put an even bigger asterisk on that because obviously how this person's measuring metrics has changed since SoFurry came back online, because the way that they manage the site has changed. So, and we'll go over that in a bit. But basically, like, it's obviously showing, like, that, yeah, SoFurry may be in trouble. And obviously, like, the comment section for the article is, like, using very colorful and frustrated language, like, Tormiel's a Nazi or dictator or, and things like that. And basically they're trying to promote Mousepad as sort of the anti-Tormiel thing. As I said, if Tormiel had a dream about trying to be like Fur Affinity, the monkey paw doth curl. And unfortunately for Tormiel, now the monkey paw has said, yeah, you want to be like Fur Affinity? Here. Now everyone's treating you like Dragoneer when he was alive. And basically going, Dragoneer's going to destroy Fur Affinity. Here's another furry website. Here's another furry website. Here's another furry website. It's like, hey, Dragoneer's not in charge of this furry website. And that was sort of like a main promotional tool. And so that's sort of what I feel about like Mousepad right now, is like it is literally I don't like Tormiel, I'm going to create a website that goes against Tormiel. And so it goes. And by the way, nothing against that. Like, it shows a living community in the internet, particularly when, furries move from one site to another simply because they don't like the smell of the leadership there. Absolutely. So that seems to be what's happening here. Tormiel has now become the new sort of Dragoneer, and people are making websites based off of his existence. Similar to like Weasel. And this is why I say calling a website dead is very, very precarious. Because in my opinion, Weasel should be dead by now. Like, nobody has heard of Weasel. Like, what is Weasel? Like no furry younger than me, and even me, it's like when you tell me like Weasel's still alive, I'm like, really? Like the reason Weasel really pushed and came around was because like Fur Affinity kept dropping the ball on website updates. And yeah, I kind of was like, at that point I was kind of a little bit jaded too. So I like threw a few bones their way. Not that much. It was like $50. And like during the whole, like their whole creation phase. And I am shocked that they're still around, because I used it for about like a month or two and then like stopped. And then every once in a while I'll look back and I'll go, oh yeah, that was a thing. And it's still a thing apparently. But if you were to ask me back then, it's like, when do you think Weasel will still be around in 2026? I was like, no, absolutely not. I don't think so. So to say like SoFurry is dead is a little preemptive. SoFurry has a little bit more going for it than Weasel does, in my opinion, and it sounds like Tormiel's bankrolling it. How long can he keep doing that and maintain sanity? Not sure, but I do think that it is preemptive. Now, for the asterisks, as I said, 2026 is turning out to be a year where it seems like it's going to even come in under 2010's numbers, which is kind of very shocking. But that being said, it's important to realize that the numbers and the way they collected it have changed. So if you read more into it, the Furbitron says, SoFurry used to publish the numbers of submissions they claim at the bottom right corner of the front page. However, they redesigned the site no longer does that. Publishes that information as of the 2026 relaunch. And then right before the old site shut down, they claimed approximately 1.4 million submissions, and basically the ID at the end was 2.26 million. So only about 62.4% of the possible things were actually used. So there's probably an overestimation in this chart, which means that while I'm saying that, 2025 might come in under 2010, I mean, they were using the same metric. They were using an apples-to-apples metric, so they were probably overestimating things. Comparing the 2026 numbers might be a little bit more precarious because now they're using a different method. So them not keeping up with the line, maybe it's because their numbers are simply more accurate, because all these numbers, all these different lines might be inflated. In other words, we have learned absolutely nothing. I'm sorry for wasting your time. Lies, damn lies, and dirty statistics. They even go into more detail in another section of their update news site, basically where they're talking about, they no longer use the numeric submission ITs on SoFurry because they can't do that. So instead they use an API provided by SoFurry, and the API. So the API. So now that they have access to the API, which is a very dictator thing to do, is to provide a furry website tracking thing numbers. Being sarcastic a little bit, but basically, like between 50, it's probably going to be more accurate going forward, but it wasn't prior. So basically, then it goes over why they didn't have any records on the downtime, which is obvious. So basically, at the to put the nail in the coffin, it says because of this, the numbers for 2026 and on are not directly comparable to the numbers before July 2025. Now, in my opinion, if that is true, my argument would be is they should basically put the pre-2025 SoFurry chart on a different chart than everything. I know it's like you don't want to lose quote unquote information from prior years, but if the 2026 numbers and onwards are not going to be comparable to the 2025 years and onwards because of the different metrics in which they're collected, I would absolutely say no, then they shouldn't be on the same chart, because it's going to cause somebody to just go in here and go look at this, 2026 is coming in less than 2025. Oh no, it's bad, right? So probably best to kind of separate out those charts at some point. But that's it, basically. If Tormiel is bankrolling SoFurry, hopefully it isn't in as much danger. But as I said, if you feel that your favorite furry content website is in danger, always make sure that you save some local copies of the things that you really enjoy in case they are not provided elsewhere or you can't find them elsewhere. But more importantly, try to find the artist and try to follow the artist on a neutral platform as well. That might be a even better way of going about doing it, because then then you won't lose track of the artist if they do end up posting new stuff that you enjoy elsewhere. That's all I got to say about that. And we'll see you guys next time. Kick that like, kick the subscribe button, kick a comment in the comment section, and we'll see you all next time. Have a good one.